Hello, 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 hello. Welcome to the Collapse Experiment. I'm apparently late. I have a comment. I have never come into this with a comment. And of course, it's let's get this party started. Wow, thank you. Welcome back. Beautiful and amazing people, to steal that from We Are Change, another great channel you should probably check out. But anyways, not to discourage you from this channel, because this channel is pretty awesome. Horse medicine. I mean, who would have thought that horse medicine would be the in thing, the the new talking point? You should take this non FDA approved abortion abortion medication. Isn't it for horse ulcers? Yeah. So somehow, this other drug that we're not allowed to talk about because it is a very cheap and viable option for said pandemic. Not allowed to talk about it. Cannot talk about it. But we're allowed on Twitter, Facebook, all the outlets. All the outlets are allowing people to talk about this other horse medication that you can buy over the counter at your local Tractor Supply, because the people using this know what the hell a Tractor Supply is. Um, they're doing videos showing people how to turn said medication into a abortion alternative, because that's what the company wants. They're like, hey, our stock's going up. Oh. uh Yeehaw, disinformation. Fact check. Yeah, fact check. So all the fact checkers out there need to go out and do their job and say, this is not an abortion alternative. This is horse paste. You can't do this. That's bad. We'll take away your whatever. So that's happening. That's the circus clown world that people keep referring to, is the same people who are screaming at folks like me for saying that there's this cheap alternative that people should be trying. The only side effect is you might poop a lot. No. Apparently inducing early labor and causing a miscarriage slash planned abortion is that's okay. That's approved. Nobody is taking that shit down, and that's the Ministry of Truth for ya. Just to throw that out there. To get to the news, and yes, that was news. That's unfortunately real news. That's happening. White House says DHS disinformation board will be nonpartisan and apolitical, meaning they're completely run by the Democrats. You have to take anything that comes out of this department, flip it around, pretend that it's a card. You flip it over, and whatever's on one side, the opposite is on the other, and that's what they're saying. That's how this is going to work. This is through the Epoch Times. The White House on Monday asserted that a recently convened board on misinformation under the Department of Homeland Security will be nonpartisan and apolitical amid concerns it may threaten free speech. It's a complete violation of free speech. The making of this board is a direct violation of the First Amendment. Everything that's in the First Amendment that it says the government can't do is what this board is designed to do. I don't know how a lawsuit hasn't been filed about this yet, but that's just me. I'm not a lawyer. I just read and I understand words, and this there's there's no timeline for this country where you start out with the Constitution. You have the very first one. The guys were like, what's top priority here? And they're like, let's see here, freedom of speech, journalism, religion, and let's put all those together. Oh, and the government can't regulate what people say or throw them in prison. These things. And this is exactly what they're not supposed to be doing, according to the same paper that created the government who created this board. How exactly would this board combat that? Would it just be fact checks, publishing guidance, or what would Americans actually see when it comes to the work of this board? A reporter asked. I like this reporter. Unfortunately, it doesn't say who it was, but at least they're asking the good questions. So, what this would do is continue that work, and it would help coordinate alternate activities from the department related to disinformation that poses a threat to the homeland. It continues the work done by Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency back in 2020. Yeah, again, this shouldn't exist. I mean, unless it's like a foreign influence, I honestly, I just want to be able to post stuff and not get a notification saying, "Hey, we're going to label this as misinformation. We're going to add this COVID thing to your post. We're going to redirect people to true information that 2 weeks from now is going to be false, but we're going to leave that shit on your post because timing and everything. Like the it wasn't true 2 weeks ago, but now it's true. But we're gonna keep it there because you posted it 2 weeks ago, even though now, uh, yeah. Um, I have several posts on Instagram that still have their bullshit added to it. So, non-part. So yeah. The Ministry of Truth is a democratic liberal organization. That's what the article is stating. Food bank demand soars again as inflation crushes working poor. Yes, we're back to this again. Remember when they wouldn't let people go to work and then, food banks were being overrun and they didn't have food because nobody was working to bring in the food that would be delivered if people were working, and then the non-working people needed food, but planning. It's about planning ahead, and that's something our government is not good at. The highest inflation prints in 4 decades have forced some Americans to flood food banks and pantries. Again, it literally says again. Like, I'm not even adding that. Wall Street Journal reports that Forgotten Harvest in Detroit has experienced a dramatic increase in demand. Since December, demand on the food bank has increased from 25% to 45% in March alone. When energy and food prices soared, demand jumped 30% over the prior month. All right, yeah. So, what happens when there's no food? I mean, these people are already going to a food bank. The prices are up, and the prices are up because there's a limited amount of food in the stores. What happens when there's no food at the food bank? I'm just saying, this summer is going to get wild. And you think the abortion protests are bad? I just watched a cop be accosted at some protest last night on a video, and then the same people smashed his car. This was in LA, not Washington, D.C., not Seattle. It was in LA, and they smashed this cop's car because a memo was leaked from the Supreme Court, and they pretty much know who that was. I'll share that towards the end of this if I remember. But yeah, so they're seeing a dramatic increase in people using food banks already. Anarchist Collective shares instructions to make DIY abortion pills. Yes, I did share an article on this because it's clown world. It's DIY medicine collectives are preparing for the horrifying prospect that Roe versus Wade will be overturned. Ugh. With the Supreme Court poised to overturn it's not a constitutional right. It's not. And this is coming from somebody who I have a penis. I don't sleep around. I don't care. I have 2 kids. I just yeah. This whole thing, like it's weird. Like I grew up going to Catholic schools. I saw the extreme side of like wanting to stop abortion, but seeing the side that's just like abortion is a great pastime. I wish everybody could do it. That's that's disgusting compared to the stuff I saw on the other side. It's just the people who are pushing this whole like no, we should have abortions on the street corners. Um, those people, I can only imagine, have mental illness. They're not freaking right in the head. Like it's just even the comedians that were just like talking all this shit about it. It's but now after 2 years of them saying that you couldn't use a certain horse medication for another thing, now they're like, hey, you have this alternative. You should use it. They don't understand irony with the Supreme. Let's see here. Um, an anarchist collective that makes DIY medicine has released detailed instructions for making abortion pills. The group has previously released instructions for making DIY EpiPen and for making Daraprim, the pill that makes PharmaBro Martin Shkreli infamous. The Four Thieves Vinegar Collective first demonstrated how to make misoprostol tablets, which are used to induce an abortion at the Please Try This at Home conference in Pittsburgh in 2019. Last year, after Texas passed a near total abortion ban, published a 17-minute video explaining how to make the pills at home. So yeah, this is considered okay. It's weird. And it's also weird, and I just learned this a little while ago, the EpiPen thing, that's true too. And the strange thing is it's taking the version of the EpiPen that's for sheep, which is like a few dollars, and it's the exact same product, and then just using it on people, which is like what, $400 or $500 a pen, something insanely crazy like that. So there's some useful things that this group actually does. It's just as for this one, it's yeah, there can be some horrible side effects from doing this, like death. Death is possible from something like this. Anyways, moving on. Russia is returning to the gold standard. Is China next? Yes. I mean, that's pretty much a given. The only downside, and the reason I think it's going to be delayed, is because once they go on the gold standard, they can't tinker with their currency anymore. But I have a feeling as soon as they realize that they are now the world reserve currency, that all changes. They don't have to worry about tinkering with their currency in order to get out of certain debt payments and tinkering with their stock market. No sooner than it was that I wrote an article talking about how Russia is going back to the ruble with gold, then one of Russia's most powerful security intelligence officers and a close ally of Putin has admitted the country's intentions to do just that. Yeah. This has been coming for a long time. And as for China, they're going to follow suit. They want to see how it goes with Russia first. Russia is now the proxy for what China is planning to do. They're learning from Russia's mistakes and the things that they get right. And so, depending on how Ukraine goes, Taiwan. Depending on how the gold standard goes, the yuan. It's I mean, they're already preparing for like us trying to steal their money if they happen to invade a certain country. And I'm predicting that no sooner will the gravity of this decision finally sink in that the West, that China will follow closely in Russia's footsteps and do the same. Exactly. Russia backing its currency with gold represents one of the most drastic changes to the foreign currency market in decades. As of 2022, precisely 0 countries will adhere to a gold standard, though many countries still hold gold in reserve. Remember how France repatriated all of their gold recently? This is the only way to restabilize the world economy at this point. And I'm betting that the euro is just going to go bye-bye because it's going to be a fiat currency for all of Europe. But then when you have countries in Europe backing their own currency with something like gold, the euro's done. Absolutely done. Everybody's going to say, I want to hold the currency that is represented by something, not just a trade partnership, but an actual physical thing. Because as we're seeing with like Hungary trying to veto the oil ban, there isn't a unification in Europe, regardless of what you say. It's just that's speaking of which, EU proposes ban on Russian oil imports. Finally, we knew this was coming, and I'm guessing that they finally came to a consensus that certain countries are not. It's not going to be immediate for them. Seemingly right on cue, and by that we mean less than 2 weeks after Emmanuel Macron won re-election in France, securing the European status quo, and shortly after the Germans acquiesced to demand for a gradual reduction in Russian oil imports, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, I'm guessing, announced plans for a phased ban on all Russian oil by the end of the year. So it's not immediate. They're sticking with the gradual thing that everyone else is bitching about. The European Parliament, this would be a complete import ban on all Russian oil, seaborne and pipeline, crude and refined. We will make sure that we phase out Russian oil in an orderly fashion in a way that allows us and our partners to secure alternative supply routes and minimize the impact on global markets. This is why we will phase out Russian supply of crude oil within 6 months and refine products by the end of the year. We are going to see a drastic increase in the price of oil due to this. If they stick to this, and which I have a feeling they're going to, we're probably going to see 120 plus per barrel in a couple weeks. That's just my guess, and then it's going to increase as this goes on. Had to seal up a brisket and see how it turns out. Woo! All right. Somebody's doing some good old-fashioned cooking. All right. Mike Rowe. I like this guy. I know that he did have a reality show, and some people think he's... A lot of people have a different impression of Mike Rowe than who he really is. It says truckers aren't buying the Putin price hike because it's bullshit. Spin as diesel hits new high. Yes. I've been reading about this, and Putin actually has absolutely nothing to do with the diesel shortage. There's I actually want to do a video where I have like the board in the back with all the strings linking everything. I discussed this yesterday and showing like why we're having the issues that we're having, and it all boils down to bad policies from Truman Amisham oppression. Dirty Jobs is amazing, and Mike Rowe is a huge advocate for the little guy. Yes, he is. At least that's how I perceive him. He has an amazing voice, and was in theater. he also has some actual programs for younger people to encourage them not to go to college and get into the trades. And there's one success story where it was a woman that went through his program and she dropped out of college first semester, went into welding of all things, and now she works for NASA welding the different rockets and instruments that they use in space. So I thought that was pretty cool. Anyways, let's get to what he has to say, because I have a feeling it's going to be close to what I'm going to say. Baltimore native Mike Rowe became famous as the Dirty Jobs guy, filming second season of How America Works for Fox Business. Blah, blah, blah. Can we get to what he actually has to say? Sat down, blah, blah, blah. He said truckers he knows aren't buying the Putin price hike narrative. All right, here's what he actually said. I get video almost every day now from people who we featured on Dirty Jobs and How America Works. They just send me videos of them at the gas pump, and some of them are filling up 18 wheelers, and I'm not kidding you, $1,100 to $1,200. Most people, all we can think about is the price for us as a relative terms. How no, it's awful. When you put $1,200 in a gas tank, and just 6 months ago it was costing you $600 to $700, the exponential reality is of it is starting to sink in. You just can't walk that back. It touches every single thing that matters in this country, from food production to transportation, all of it. But you have to talk about fertilizer too. There's no food without fertilizer in this country. The cost of fertilizer is hundreds of percent higher than it was. When you combine that with the cost of energy, the average person has now really gotten the memo, but not from the gas pump, from a restaurant, a steak. The cost of a steak is almost 2 times what it was 6-7 months ago. Guy said to me the other day, it's like falling down the stairs in slow motion. We're watching it happen. It's happening in real time. It's not just diesel. It's not just gasoline. So I don't see them getting into it's not getting into the details. So this is where I'm going to explain what is happening with diesel. Earlier this year, the Biden administration put new restrictions on train companies when it came to the shipping containers, how they can operate, moving cars, etc. There's also a shortage of people working in the train industry. So when we had the trucker shortage and companies were using trains more in order to transport goods, they were using more cars than the actual trains could haul. That created an issue. Then the regulations kicked in, and the train company said, we can't operate this way. It's going to take way too long in order to do the things that you want us to do. Why can't we just continue on the way that we have? And the Biden administration said, no, because we said so. So the response from the train company was, for one, they cut down on the number of trains that they're using because they don't have people to operate them. They also run on diesel, which costs a shit ton of money right now, which is upping cost. The other thing is that means they also have to cut down on the number of cars that they can transport. So they put limits on the companies who have things that they need to ship. One of those companies, and this is just one, stated they work with nitrogen. They produce fertilizer. They also transport nitrogen used for making diesel. Now they have to figure out, do we ship the nitrogen for the diesel plant that produces diesel for trucks and tractors and train cars, or do we ship the fertilizer? So now you have this loop. If we ship the fertilizer, the farmers don't have the diesel to put the fertilizer in the fields. If we ship the diesel, the tractors are running, but there's no fertilizer going to the fields. Not producing the diesel also means you can't ship food. You can't run trains. the Biden administration is flat out killing the fucking supply chain because they have to micromanage every damn thing and change things that apparently have been working just fine before they came into power. So it's an old man wielding a gun on the set of Rust. Instead, he's shooting himself in the foot while also shooting the director. It's freaking asinine. That's in a nutshell what is happening with the diesel shortage and all the other problems that we're having right now. The diesel prices, the shortage of fertilizer. We could be producing fertilizer here. Russia's not shipping it out, and they keep saying, well, there's no ban on Russian fertilizer. Russia said we're not sending out to anybody who is hostile towards us. So, yeah, we're not getting any Russian fertilizer. Thanks, you dumbasses. Yeah, people will make a ton of trade as the colleges are overloaded with applicants and the pool of educated people are diluted by the human flood. This is what we call a win-win for the dog-faced pony boy medicine to help. uh, gotta love old man insults. Oh, and man, I know there's more news than this, but this is the last article I have posted. General Milley warns Congress. This is the white rage guy. Just keep that in mind. Chances of war among great powers increasing, not decreasing. He seems to be really concerned about this. But considering who he is, I kind of don't care about his opinion, but let's see what he has to say. With NATO-Russia tensions boiling, the enduring fog of war with the on the ground in Ukraine, and constantly ratcheting rhetoric, which has even of late dangerously included nuclear threats, this seems almost like an invitation for yet more escalation. Not to mention the competing information war, which has seen all sides consistently allege false flags in the works. Russian use of chemical and biological weapons against Ukraine would likely trigger a reaction from the international community. Do you remember like a week or two ago when they were saying they did it? They used it. They used drones to spray people, and nothing has come of that because they were probably using tear gas to try to get the people out of the mill. The warning came as the Pentagon leaders briefed lawmakers at the State Appropriations Subcommittee hearing on the defense budget because they're pushing for that $33 billion. Saw an idiot on Twitter that was using 33,000 million, which isn't a fucking number. It's just wordplay to sound more intelligent. It also sounds less than 33 billion. It's the same number. I understand that, but you're just being a tool. Anyways, Austin had issued a similar warning of a significant reaction from the West if Russia were to use chemical weapons or WMDs in Ukraine a month ago during an appearance on CBS Face the Nation, which the nation does not watch anymore. In the early part of April, there had actually been attempts of Ukraine Azov militants to claim that they were victims of a Russian chemical attack, and nobody died because it wasn't a chemical attack. But this was met by general skepticism among many war analysts and media pundits, despite UK government attempts to give it credibility. Why is the UK so interested in going to war? Not only do they want to go to war in Ukraine, but they're also pushing for NATO forces to be down in the South Pacific. Like that has anything to do with the North Atlantic trade, or like, how about you just stick with the Atlantic, okay? Like, I understand that you're like, oh my God, my iPhone's not going to work if they invade Taiwan. I kind of understand that, but as a guy who still uses a typewriter, like, I could probably go without this thing. Probably get more done too. So let's see here. Comments. I know the last was nonsense, but the world has gone nuts. Yes, it has. Do you remember when Alex Jones said the government was using drones? Then, when asked about it, the US government said, I can't tell you that we have drones. Oh, yeah. And they're using them to kill US citizens. That was twice. That was a thing. Zarqawi and his son, I believe it was Zarqawi. He was a U.S. citizen, U.S. born Muslim cleric. They harassed him at airports to the point where several years after 9/11, all of a sudden he's just like, you know what? You're right. They are the enemy. He's a guy that actually said in his mosque, these are bad Muslims. Speaking about 9/11, these are not people to look up to. U.S. is a great country. It's done great things for me and my blah, blah, blah. He was speaking great about the U.S. And then they literally just effed with him at airports to the point where he was just like, what? I think those guys might have been on to something. And then, so he goes overseas. We kill him in a drone strike. And then a couple weeks later, we kill his son, who was a minor, also a U.S. citizen, in a drone strike, while he was trying to reconnect with family to figure out like his roots. Blew him up at a cafe, I believe, with a bunch of innocent civilians around. So thanks, Obama. Apparently, Alex Jones got $2 million in donated Bitcoin. Oh my God. I wonder if he's going to shut down or if he'll get back on Twitter and be able to advertise. He's still up and running. Band.video, InfoWars. That's also like he's still doing his broadcast. If you're interested in seeing up-to-date Alex Jones footage and broadcast, you can go on Odyssey and what was Library? He posts on there. So his stuff is still available. You just can't get it on YouTube. You can't get it on Twitter. I really hope he comes back to Twitter because at this point in time, I think it'd be freaking hilarious. What do you think is the viability of Truth Social? I think I'm not familiar with the platform. I don't have it. I'm not on there. I don't have an account. I know that Parler had a lot of limitations. It was basically like a more simplified version of Twitter, but you really couldn't have like conversations on there. I love how they're trying to say that everything with January 6th was organized on Parler, and Parler was like, we don't have an events thing. Like people just post. Like there's no like, hey, I'm holding this event in Washington D.C. Please RSVP. Like there's no option for that on Parler, and they already know that Facebook was the one that was used for organizing people to go on January 6th. So that's funny. So I don't know what True Social is like. I think it's going to end up being like Trump's campaign organization platform is really what it's going to come down to. I know that there's already a lot of like Dan Bongino's on there. A lot of other people are already on there, and they've got hundreds of thousands, if not a couple million followers already. It's also the #1 downloaded app on the Google App Store. So apparently it's going places. I mean, it's up there higher than Twitter. But then again, I think anybody who's on Twitter is already on there. And I think the influx of people that they saw on Twitter recently was probably just old people like starting up their old accounts again and just getting back on the platform because like I'll say 5-7 years ago, I first got on Twitter. The first time, I didn't understand it. Honestly, I still don't understand it. I pretty much just use it for updates on news because with journalists being on there, like real journalists, not the ones that are like, here's a picture of Brad Pitt's junk. No, the real journalists, they tend to post things on there before the story's even written. So if you want like up-to-date stuff on what's going on, like some of the riots that are happening now because of the leaked document from the Supreme Court, that's happening. I haven't really heard too much about it. It's definitely not on the certain news outlets yet. But I'm sure they'll end up being mostly peaceful protests for, the right to commit disgusting acts. I'm just going to say it that way. So, yeah, that is it for news stories. I did see something about Putin handing over his authority, something about cancer surgery. I don't know. I don't know if that's made up. They were trying to push this whole like he has a terminal illness thing a couple months back, saying that that's why Putin was acting the way that he is, that he wants to do things before he dies. I don't know about that. Could also be that they're planning on doing something and then, oh no, it wasn't Putin, it was the other guy, and false flag, whatever. I don't know. I don't even pretend to know what the is going on right now. I just try to put the dots together into something that makes some kind of sense. And when you have somebody in charge who absolutely makes no sense whatsoever, that's even more difficult. What do you think? Oh, who do you think leaked the Roe draft? Well, hold on. I think I might have taken a screenshot. Yes. Okay. This is through. It is not verified yet. I will say that. This is through Will Chamberlain. He is a lawyer, not a journalist, but he is very familiar with the operations of the Supreme Court. So he did some diving on the internet to try to find who is the most likely culprit that would have leaked. Meet Elizabeth Dusch, Deutsch. She's currently a law clerk for Justice Breyer. And in my humble opinion, she's the most likely person to have leaked the draft Supreme Court opinion in Dobbs purporting to overturn Roe versus Wade. Oh, she has her pronouns on here. That's actually a pretty good sign. Law clerk at the Supreme Court of the United States, Washington District of Columbia, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So anyways, Will Chamberlain, if you're not familiar with him, absolutely brilliant guy. Usually knows what the heck he's talking about. And when I first saw this, other people were saying it was probably somebody under Sotomayor, but I'm curious. Does anybody else remember this? The election debacle was going on, and it went to the Supreme Court. Trump was suing the Biden administration, and the lawsuit had a firm foundation in the 2000 election, because the reason that Bush ended up becoming president was because Florida changed their laws without going through the actual state Congress. It was executive order. Having done that, it went against the Constitution, where the state lawmakers have to make any changes to the Constitution. Governor's not a lawmaker. They don't write the bills. They don't pass the bills. They're supposed to sign in whatever the state, the representatives of the people of the state, right, that gets passed. Florida didn't do that. So every court leading up to that decision sided with Gore. And Bush kept appealing until it went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court came back and said, this is a violation of the Constitution. Therefore, the votes go to Bush. Now you have what? 4 or 5 states that changed their election laws beforehand, and they didn't do it through the state House and Senate. Therefore, they're not legitimate laws according to the Constitution. When the justices were meeting, people kept saying Bush versus Gore. And then one of the judges were like, I don't want to hear about Bush and Gore. There's riots in the streets. This is not 2000. So obviously the court they have been influenced before by the rioting that took place due to Black Lives Matter, a terrorist organization, and people effing know that. That's why this got leaked. Nobody's talking about what happened beforehand with the election and the results from the Supreme Court. They were bullied out of making their decision on a prior case that was less than 20 years before. That's the situation we're in. They know that they can bully judges. This is no longer a democracy. This is turning into, I don't know, I think this might be literally fascism, right? The small party just bullies everybody else into doing what they want. What impact will that impact the midterms? It's hard to say right now because there's speculation that with what is coming with the food shortage, the possibility of war, there's good sources stating that the war with China has already been decided amongst the federal government. It's very obvious we're already at war with Russia. There's also in my own state of Michigan, the governor, the dipshit in charge, she's already made it basically mandatory that so she vetoed a bill stating that on the ballot it would say you can only vote once, voting twice in any election is a felony. Our state lawmakers just wanted to have a line added to the ballot telling somebody you cannot do this twice. And she vetoed that. And then she also passed a bill saying that mail-in ballots were going to be like the standard. So I have a feeling that's going to be one of their games. So will it affect the Supreme Court? I don't know if the whole Roe versus Wade thing is going to affect the Supreme Court. I think that this is just a starting point for causing more chaos this summer so that they can change the rules in order to have a firmer grasp on how the election is run. I'll put it that way. I have a feeling that what happens this summer is going to be just you might want to start carrying a piece. I'll legally. I don't know what the terms are in your state. If you need a CPL, you should probably get one. If you can open carry, yeah, not a bad idea at this point. Same issue with the government changing laws without going through the legislation, such as Georgia, Pennsylvania, Washington, NV, Nevada. I'm sure there are more. Yes. Yeah, there's a lot of them. And I did see where there was subpoenas for the investigation going into voter mules in Georgia, where ballots were taken from one district and shipped over to another for counting because they weren't getting the numbers they wanted. Will Black Lives Matter march next to No Baby Lives Matter? Yes. Because, you know, a black woman's right to keep their population low is a completely racist policy that, of course, Black Lives Matter would push for. Because nothing that Black Lives Matter marches over actually helps Black people. I'll put it that way. And primarily, there's more Black women that have abortions than other populations. And that's why Planned Parenthood was created to begin with, was to keep the Black population down in more ways than one. So, um, yeah, we're going to see a rekindling of Black Lives Matter. We already are in Michigan, Grand Rapids. Man, what country was he from? It was an immigrant. I want to say Ethiopia, but I'm not sure. Anyways, this guy was pulled over. He was an immigrant from an African country. Resisted arrest, stole a cop's taser, tried to shoot the cop with the taser while he was being detained on the ground, ended up being shot and killed. And there's been protests and riots ever since. There's actually been guns pulled on people driving down the street during the protest. That's been happening. I haven't heard anything about any arrests in those situations. Quite frankly, this is why I moved out of the city. I did not see 2020 being an end of any of that crap. When will the panic set in for food like the toilet paper run? When there's no food. We are a culture that reacts after the fact and doesn't respond beforehand. We see this in management and we see this in our population. Nobody was panicking over toilet paper until toilet paper wasn't on the shelf. Then they wanted toilet paper. That's just how people operate, and that's why this summer is going to be really bad. I did see one video, I forget the channel on YouTube, where the guy was talking about he's expanding his garden. He actually put a vegetable garden in his front yard. And while he was working on it, the neighbors are walking down the street with their dogs, and then they slow down. They're kind of looking over, and they're like, why is he tearing up his lawn? Why is he growing so much food? And the guy just kind of looks back and waves, and he's just like, yeah, these people, they don't have a clue what's going on. They think I'm the weirdo, and we're going to see a lot of that. And we're going to see a lot of people, like, when they go walking their dogs, a couple tomatoes going to come missing off of your plants, and then there's going to be issues. Yeah, I would always tell people, one, don't break the law. Tag on that guy's car that was shot was for a different car. Yep. Yeah. The he was driving a car that I believe the license plate was stolen. The guy also tried to leave with his friends in the car. Don't resist arrest. And he had this long rap sheet. It's not like when your rap sheet gets to a certain length, you pretty much have a degree in law. You know what you should and shouldn't be doing. And he continued doing that. So not only did he know that he was breaking law, he continued to do so in defiance of, not a good dude. He also pulled a gun on a pregnant woman, which sounds vaguely familiar to another story of a guy that was killed by police. Weird. Anytime you pull someone over and you are by yourself, call for backup. I can't remember if the cop was by himself or not. But yeah, that's a policy that they had in Kalamazoo. You would see cars sitting on the side of the road for 5-10 minutes, and then other patrol cars would show up. If there was one person in the car, the officer could engage. If there was more than one person in the car, they had to wait for backup because they didn't drive with partners. It was one patrol car per officer. Yeah, he was alone. Yeah. That's an unfortunate situation. And especially for the officer, because now he has to live with the fact that he killed somebody in the line of duty. Nobody really thinks about that because police are not people. But I'm kind of torn on the subject of cops because I understand what they deal with on a daily basis, having lived in a ghetto for 14 years. I saw firsthand what they were dealing with. On the other hand, when you go into a restaurant and you arrest the owner for operating and trying to make a living during something as horribly stupid as COVID, I also don't like those people, especially when they're forcing an unconstitutional law. It's not a law. It wasn't passed by the House or the Senate. It was only signed in by the governor, and therefore it's not a law. It's a decree. And we tend to go to war with people who do decrees on Americans. So we don't put up with their bullshit. Cops just need to be smarter. No matter if the shooting was justified, as a police officer, you are under the microscope. Unless you're in New York and you're wearing out people for not wearing masks. My parents were both in law enforcement. Yeah, from my understanding, a lot of the cops in New York were not enforcing the mask mandates, and that was why they called in the sheriff's department to enforce a lot of the stuff with like closing down restaurants and stuff. Cops would not do it. I back the blue, but I'm critical of them too. Yes, there's bad people in every industry. There's good cooks, there's bad cooks. Like when, just for an example, when I worked in the kitchen, caught a guy who was spitting in food, thought it was funny. He was training another guy, and he said, "Yeah, this is table 13. This is what you do when you get table 13." And yeah, I took his ass and I flung him out of the kitchen in front of a long line of customers who were at the counter, and the manager was at the register, and she just kind of looked at me, and I looked at her, and I said, "He's not allowed in my kitchen. Get him out of here." And yeah, so she took care of the line of customers. I prepared and made all the food that they were eating. And then she came into the kitchen and was like, "What was all that about?" And you can never clear out all the ship rats. Yep. Yeah. That is true. There's just always going to be those assholes. So, anyways, I've got a couple things to do. It's going to be like in the 60s here today, so I'm hoping to get some things done around the house. That's it for news. And yeah, I'm just going to leave you with buy some food, some shelf stable food. I would highly recommend filling some extra containers, even if it's just the 1 gallon thing for your lawnmower. I would go out and make sure that is filled. You might need it, and it's going to be cheaper now than it will be later. And yeah, might be a good idea to start carrying. So great show as always. Thank you very much. Coming from you, who has all the high production value and really sets the standard for people like me who has this gritty screen. And yeah, if I don't have the headphones on, I don't even know if the mic is working. So that's just me. Anyways, take care. Keep on typing.